The year 1791 settled softly upon the young city of New York like a veil of smoke from countless hearths. America was still a trembling experiment. New laws inked on parchment, streets half-paved, ships creaking at anchor in the harbor, while the smell of tar, salt, and horse dung mixed with the tang of promise. In a narrow house near the East River, Peter Cooper entered the world. His father, John Cooper, bent over his tiny son with calloused hands that bore the marks of hard work. His mother, Hannah, hummed a hymn she had learned from her own mother's lips. They could not have guessed that the small life they held would one day stretch across an entire century, binding it together like an iron rail through time. Peter's first memories were of motion, of wheels turning, water flowing, and people forever busy making or mending. He was one of 9 children, which meant there was never quite enough of anything except noise and energy. When he was 5, he found a broken pocket watch in a gutter and spent 3 days taking it apart on the family table. When it ticked again, faintly, his mother crossed herself and whispered, "The boy's got the gift." That small tick was the sound of a destiny beginning to wind. By 10, Peter built wooden contraptions that baffled the neighbors. He made a wind-powered mill that pumped water from a barrel and a tiny spinning wheel for his sister's dolls. But New York offered little comfort to curious children. His father's hat-making trade failed, and debts followed them like shadows. When Peter was 14, he was sent north to Peekskill to apprentice with a coachmaker. There, in the smell of paint and varnish, he learned patience, the way wood curved to the plane, the way brass bent under the hammer. More than craft, he learned discipline, the quiet truth that invention begins in repetition. The years rolled forward like the slow wheels of a wagon. America was swelling, its borders pushing westward, its cities hungering for iron, coal, and speed. Peter listened whenever travelers spoke of new machines in England, of spinning frames, of steam engines, of wagons that could move without horses. Such things seemed as miraculous as flight, yet he believed. "If they can do it there," he muttered one night, "we can do it here." He was still only a youth, yet already the rhythm of steam was beating inside him. At 17, his apprenticeship ended. He walked back to New York with little more than a few coins and a head full of plans. For years he worked wherever he could: cabinet maker, grocer, brewer's assistant, machinist. Each trade added a piece to his growing puzzle of the world. When he met Sarah Bedell, a quiet young woman from Hempstead with steady eyes and the patience of the sea, he found balance. They married in 1813 and began life together in a small rented house filled with sawdust, laughter, and the hum of new beginnings. Sarah believed in him absolutely, even when his project seemed half-mad. "One day," she said, "your tinkering will move mountains." He smiled. He only wanted to move wheels. By his mid-30s, Cooper had turned his knack for invention into modest prosperity. He built a glue factory on the edge of New York, ugly, smelly work that paid surprisingly well. There, he refined animal parts into isinglass, a form of gelatin used for clarifying beer and making strong adhesive. He experimented constantly, mixing powders and drying sheets of translucent jelly in the sun. Sometimes he burned entire batches. Sometimes he discovered something new, a sheen, a stiffness, a way to make the product last longer. The workers joked that their employer could make gold out of bones. Peter laughed with them. He was building knowledge more valuable than coin. Around 1828, whispers reached him of a daring project in Maryland, a new kind of road made of iron rails stretching from Baltimore toward the Ohio River. The Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, first of its kind in the United States, was being carved through hill and forest, but it faced a problem. Horses could not haul freight fast enough to make the venture profitable. The directors knew of steam engines in England, but none had yet been built successfully on American soil. When Cooper heard this, he felt the old excitement fluttering in his chest. "Steam," he said softly, "is the future of this country." He traveled south to see the project himself. Baltimore in 1829 was alive with enterprise. Shipyards hammering, merchants shouting on the docks, and, on the edge of town, the new rails glittering in the sun. Cooper walked their length, running his fingers along the cold metal. He met the railroad's board, stern men in waistcoats, cautious with their investors' money. "Gentlemen," he said, "I believe I can build a steam engine small enough to run on your tracks, yet strong enough to pull a train." Laughter filled the room. One director sneered, "And who are you, sir, to build what the English have spent fortunes perfecting?" "An American," Cooper replied simply, "who isn't afraid to try." They granted him no funds, only permission to experiment at his own expense. In a rented workshop, Peter set to work with 2 mechanics and a blacksmith. They scavenged old parts, an unused boiler from a failed mill, brass fittings from a shipyard, wheels cast by a friendly foundry. Every evening, sparks lit the room as hammers rang and metal hissed in the quench barrel. Sarah visited once, shaking her head at the soot on his face. "You'll drive yourself to ruin," she warned. "Or to history," he answered. Months later, the little engine stood ready. Barely the size of a horse cart, it shone with brass and steel, puffing tentative clouds from its chimney. Cooper named it Tom Thumb, after the fairy tale hero who was small but clever. On a summer morning in 1830, the railroad directors gathered to witness the trial. Workers climbed trees for a better view. Children pressed against the fences. Cooper, sleeves rolled, climbed aboard and opened the throttle. Steam hissed, gears turned, and the Tom Thumb began to move. Slowly, awkwardly at first, then faster. 20 miles per hour. The crowd erupted. Farmers cheered, ladies waved handkerchiefs. For the first time on American soil, an engine ran freely under its own steam. Partway down the line, a horse-drawn car challenged the little engine to a race. The Tom Thumb surged ahead, smoke pouring like victory banners. Then a belt slipped, the blower stopped, and the pressure fell. The horse trotted past to laughter and applause. Cooper only grinned through the soot. "We lost the race," he said, "but we won the future." The directors, awed by what they had seen, ordered full-sized locomotives. Within a decade, the thunder of steam echoed from coast to coast. America had found its iron heartbeat. Cooper's invention brought him respect, though little immediate wealth. He returned to New York and poured his profits into factories that made iron beams and rolling mills. He built bridges, improved engines, and invested in telegraph companies. Yet prosperity never dulled his conscience. He remembered the poor apprentices who had worked beside him, the children who had no chance to learn. "A nation," he told Sarah one night, "is only as strong as the minds of its people. If knowledge costs too dear, we stay weak." The idea of a free school began to take hold, a school not for the privileged but for everyone. Meanwhile, his experiments with glue led him to another curiosity. When boiled and purified carefully, the residue formed a clear jelly that, when cooled, trembled like amber caught in sunlight. He tasted it once, plain, bland, but oddly pleasant. He thought of how sailors might preserve food with such a material. He patented it in 1845 as a portable gelatin dessert, though he never pursued it further. To him it was a footnote, another of 1,000 small improvements. Decades later, that same patent would inspire a sweet concoction called JELL-O, and children everywhere would laugh at its quiver. Peter would have smiled. He loved when science made joy. The 1840s and 1850s were booming years. Steamships crossed oceans. Telegraph wires sang across miles, and factories lit the night. But prosperity had its shadows. Inequality widened, corruption grew, and workers toiled 12 hours a day for meager pay. Cooper's conscience pricked him again. He was now one of the city's wealthiest men, yet he lived simply, wearing plain clothes and eating modest meals. What wealth gave him, he considered borrowed from society itself. To hoard it, he said, is to betray the very spirit that earned it. In 1853, he purchased a large plot of land on the corner of Astor Place in Manhattan. There, he planned something no one had dared attempt: a free institute for the advancement of science and art, education for all, regardless of class or gender. Architects warned the design was impossible. He wanted iron beams supporting vast open halls, ventilation without chimneys, light filtering naturally through high windows. Cooper studied engineering books, designed the girders himself, and supervised construction every day. When the Cooper Union opened its doors in 1859, people called it a marvel of both architecture and principle. Lectures were open to the public. Students of humble means studied engineering, drawing, chemistry. Abraham Lincoln would one day speak in its great hall, delivering the address that carried him to the presidency. Cooper, sitting quietly in the audience, felt a deep satisfaction. His belief that knowledge should be as free as air was no longer a dream. Through the Civil War, he poured money into hospitals and relief funds, refusing to profit from weapon contracts. "Let others make guns," he said. "I will build bridges." He was already an old man, his hair white, his voice measured. Yet he still visited his factories, walking slowly between roaring furnaces, greeting workers by name. They respected him as few industrialists were ever respected. When a reporter once asked the secret of his success, Cooper replied, "Work hard, pay fair, and never forget that a machine is only as good as the man it serves." By the time the war ended, America had entered the age of steel. The Tom Thumb was long gone, but its descendants hauled freight across thousands of miles of track. Cooper watched them with quiet pride from the veranda of his home. "The world moves faster now," Sarah said softly. "And still not fast enough for you." He chuckled. "Speed is not progress, my dear. Justice is." In 1876, at the age of 85, he astonished everyone by accepting the presidential nomination of the Greenback Party. His platform was simple: honest money, public education, and peace. Crowds came more from curiosity than hope, but they listened. His speeches were plain, without bombast, filled with homely wisdom. "I do not seek power," he told them, "but conscience. The republic needs fathers, not masters." He lost, of course, but won admiration from both supporters and rivals. "An honest man," one newspaper wrote, "in an age that sorely needs one." The years grew gentle after that. His beloved Sarah passed quietly, leaving a silence he filled with memory and work. He continued to oversee the Cooper Union, ensuring it remained free. Children would sometimes stop him on the street, calling, "Mr. Cooper, tell us about the little engine." He would kneel, eyes twinkling, and describe how the Tom Thumb had puffed like a teapot and raced a horse. They laughed, and for a moment the old man felt young again. In the spring of 1883, nearing 92, he fell ill. The doctors urged rest, but he insisted on attending the annual meeting of the Cooper Union trustees. There, leaning on his cane, he spoke slowly. "We began this work believing that knowledge would lift men out of ignorance. Look around. How many lights now burn where once there was darkness? Keep them burning." A week later, at home surrounded by family, he closed his eyes and murmured, "The world moves forward on the shoulders of many. I was only one." And then the long, steady breath of his life ended. Yet the echo of that breath carried on, in every train whistle that split the morning, in every classroom where a poor student opened a book freely, in every shimmering spoonful of gelatin dessert wobbling on a child's plate. Peter Cooper had built engines, schools, and ideas that refused to rust. He had proved that invention and compassion could share the same heart. Even now, if you walk past the old Cooper Union in Manhattan and listen closely, you might imagine the faint chuff of the Tom Thumb rising from beneath the city, the heartbeat of a dreamer who believed that knowledge, like steam, could move the world. The passing of Sarah left Peter in a quiet that no sound could quite fill. Her laughter had been the rhythm of his home, her calm the balance to his restless mind. For months after she was gone, he rose each morning at dawn as he always had, but found himself wandering the house in silence. His hands folded behind his back, the smell of old wood and iron lingering like a memory. On her desk he kept a small lock of her hair, tied with ribbon, beside one of his early sketches of the Tom Thumb. "You saw it first," he would whisper to the empty room. "You believed before anyone else did." He was an old man now, yet his mind never slowed. In 1880, he could still be found walking through the Cooper Union's great hallways, his cane tapping the tiled floors, his white hair shining like silver under the skylights he had designed decades earlier. Students often paused when they saw him, whispering, "That's Mr. Cooper." To them, he was a living legend, but to him, He was merely a witness to the flow of progress. He liked to stop and talk to the young engineers, asking what they were building, what ideas they dreamed of. "Don't fear failure," he told one nervous student who showed him a failed bridge model. "Every broken beam teaches the next one to stand." The world had changed beyond anything the boy from 1791 could have imagined. New York's skyline was clawing upward, telegraph wires crisscrossed the streets, and talk of electric light filled the air. Peter visited the laboratories of men like Thomas Edison, watching as filaments glowed in glass bulbs, turning night into day. "You are capturing the sun itself," he told Edison, eyes wide with wonder. Edison laughed softly. "And you captured the wind, sir, when you first made wheels run without horses." Peter chuckled, tapping his cane. "Then we're both guilty of mischief." But beneath the laughter, he worried. The same industrial power that had raised cities also deepened poverty. Immigrants arrived by the thousands, crowding into tenements, their hands blistered by factory work. He walked through the poorer districts sometimes, unannounced, just to see, to understand. He gave freely to charities, but charity was not enough for him. "It is not alms that men need," he said one evening to a group of reformers, "but the tools to rise by their own labor." His Cooper Union remained his answer, a temple of learning for the common man. In those later years, he became a figure of almost mythic gentleness. Newspapers called him the grandfather of invention. Children followed him in the park, holding his hands. When asked why he never retired, he said, "Because curiosity has no age." He attended science fairs, art exhibitions, and civic meetings, always listening, always learning. He met with abolitionists, women's suffragists, and young labor leaders, encouraging dialogue. Though born in an age of muskets and horses, his mind seemed to belong to the future. "The world," he said, "is a workshop without walls." Sometimes, on quiet afternoons, he took carriage rides into the countryside beyond the city. The landscape was changing, fields giving way to factories, forests cut for lumber. Steam trains roared along the horizon, their whistles echoing through the valleys. Whenever one passed, he raised his hat. "You were my firstborn," he would murmur to the ghost of the Tom Thumb. The driver, often puzzled, would glance back at the old man, who smiled faintly, lost in thought. One winter evening, while visiting his old glue works, he walked through the empty factory floor where vats and kettles once steamed. Dust coated everything. Yet in the silence, he heard again the clang of hammers, the hiss of boiling vats, the chatter of workers. He remembered how, from this humble industry, he had stumbled upon the secret of gelatin, the odd little jelly that no one at the time had cared for. "Perhaps," he mused aloud, "even our smallest creations wait patiently for their moment." He was right. Within another decade, that forgotten patent would re-emerge as JELL-O, a joy on dinner tables across the world. A sweet, wobbling tribute to the man who had found beauty even in glue. In 1881, he attended a grand banquet in his honor at Delmonico's. Senators, inventors, and businessmen filled the room, raising glasses to toast the old pioneer. The hall shimmered with gaslight. Silverware gleamed. When the applause quieted, Peter stood, his voice still clear despite his 90 years. "My friends," he began, "I am touched by your kindness, but let us not toast a man. Let us toast the work. We are all builders, each of us laying brick upon brick in the great house of human progress. And when that house stands strong, it will not remember who set the first stone, but that many hands work together." The crowd fell silent, then rose to their feet. He smiled, bowed slightly, and sat down, whispering to himself, "That is enough." The next day, he visited the Cooper Union again. Classes were in session, students hunched over drafting tables, others painting, others studying chemical apparatus. He paused to watch a young woman sketching the design of an iron bridge. "Why bridges?" he asked her. She looked up, startled, then recognized him. "Because they bring people together," she said shyly. He nodded approvingly. "Good answer. Never forget, it's not iron or stone that makes a bridge, but purpose." As the years drew shorter, Cooper began to look backward across his long life with wonder rather than pride. He had seen the Republic survive war, expand across a continent, and give birth to industries unimaginable in his youth. But he also saw the cost: the smoke-stained skies, the restless hearts of men chasing profit without thought. He often wrote letters to newspapers urging balance, warning that progress without compassion was a machine without a brake. "If we move too fast," he wrote, "we risk outrunning our own humanity." One afternoon in late autumn 1882, he sat by the window of his study as a storm brewed over the city. Rain lashed the glass, thunder grumbled like distant cannons. Lightning flashed, and for a moment he thought he saw the silhouette of the Tom Thumb gliding across the sky, its steam mingling with the clouds. He chuckled softly. "You're still racing, old friend," he said. The image faded, leaving him with only the hum of rain. That winter he fell ill. His family gathered around him, his daughter, grandchildren, and loyal friends. Even as fever blurred his vision, he spoke of work yet unfinished. "Keep the school free," he murmured. "Let every child who hungers for knowledge find bread there." One evening, a young student came to visit, bringing him a small model of a locomotive carved from wood. "For you, sir," the boy said nervously. Cooper took it in his trembling hands, studying the delicate detail. "Ah," he whispered, "the spirit of invention lives on. Promise me you'll never stop asking how things work." The boy nodded, tears in his eyes. On the morning of April 4th, 1883, as sunlight filtered through the lace curtains, Peter Cooper's breathing grew shallow. His daughter held his hand. He gazed past her toward the window, where the sounds of the waking city drifted in. Horses, wheels, and somewhere in the distance, the faint whistle of a train. A faint smile touched his lips. "Listen," he said softly. "The world is still moving." Those were his final words. The city mourned deeply. Newspapers across the country hailed him not only as an inventor, but as a man of moral genius. At his funeral, thousands stood in silence along Broadway as his coffin passed. Among them were workers in their Sunday coats, students clutching their books, even railroadmen who removed their caps as the hearse rolled by. One reporter wrote, "He gave his fortune to the people, his courage to progress, and his kindness to every soul he met." At Cooper Union, classes stopped for the day. The great hall, usually echoing with lectures and debate, was silent except for the whisper of wind through the windows. A single locomotive whistle sounded from the yard of the New York Central Railroad, a salute of iron and steam. In the decades that followed, his name remained etched not only in stone but in spirit. Cooper Union continued to grow, nurturing artists, engineers, architects, and thinkers. Great figures, Andrew Carnegie, Thomas Edison, Emma Goldman, would stand in its hall and speak of ideas that shaped the century. Each one, knowingly or not, walked in the light Peter Cooper had kindled. His belief that education should be free became the seed of countless scholarships and public schools. His insistence that wealth carried duty inspired generations of philanthropists. The tracks he laid for the Tom Thumb became the veins through which America's lifeblood flowed. But perhaps his truest legacy lay in the kind of man he had been: humble, practical, and endlessly hopeful. He had seen invention not as conquest but as collaboration, not as a race for riches but as a way to lift the human spirit. The machines he built were extensions of empathy. The schools he founded were engines of opportunity. He had loved science not for its power but for its promise. Time rolled on. The 20th century dawned with electricity, automobiles, and airplanes. Few remembered the Tom Thumb or the smell of glue in a New York workshop, yet the pulse of Cooper's imagination still beat in every spark and piston. When, years later, the dessert called JELL-O became a household delight, some old historians smiled, recalling that it began in a glue factory run by the same man who built the first American locomotive. He made even sweetness out of steam, one writer joked. In a sense, it was true. Today, if you walk the streets near Astor Place, you can still see the Cooper Union standing firm, its iron bones gleaming beneath the stone facade. Inside, students from every background study art, architecture, engineering. the very disciplines Cooper cherished. On quiet afternoons, sunlight streams through the high windows and catches on the bronze bust of Peter himself, its eyes forever watching. And if the air is very still, you might imagine the faint rumble of a train beneath the city, the whisper of steam, the spirit of an old man still at work, still dreaming. For Peter Cooper's life was more than invention. It was testimony to the boundless curiosity of the human heart. He had lived through the birth of a nation, the rise of industry, the ache of loss, and the triumph of generosity. He had proved that greatness is not measured in patents or fortunes, but in how widely one's kindness spreads. He had taught that knowledge, once given freely, multiplies like fire, lighting other fires endlessly. The world he left behind rushed onward into new ages of steel and electricity, of radio and flight. Yet somewhere in its motion lingered the echo of his first small engine. The Tom Thumb, that puffing toy of iron and steam, had been more than a machine. It had been a prophecy. It said to the world, "Move forward, dare, imagine." And that message still hums beneath the clatter of modern trains, beneath the glow of city lights, beneath the laughter of children spooning bright gelatin that quivers like captured sunlight. Peter Cooper's story is not just the tale of an inventor. It is the story of America's awakening. From hand tools to machines, from ignorance to education, from self-interest to generosity. He showed that progress and compassion could be forged from the same metal. He lived simply, gave freely, dreamed greatly, and left behind a world in motion. So the next time you hear the whistle of a train cutting through evening air, think of him. The boy who took apart a watch just to make it tick again. The man who built an engine small enough to carry a nation's hope. The dreamer who believed knowledge should belong to everyone. His steam has long since cooled, but his spirit still burns quietly in the engines of our time. And if you listen very closely, in that fading sound of iron and wind, you may hear it, the whisper of Peter Cooper's eternal promise. We move the world not with power, but with purpose.